Evening, everyone. It's Wednesday, June 1st, 2016. Calling this meeting to order. First item of business will be approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of April 7th, 2016, April 14th, well, April 7th, 2016 as amended, April 14th, 2016 as written, and March 17th, 2016 as written.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll hold off on April 28th. All right, questions from the public regarding items not on the agenda? No, thank you, Mr. Phillips. You're represented by counsel. I decline to recognize you tonight. Anybody else? Mr. Phillips, you're out of order.
I am?
I'm not recognizing you. You may sit.
You need to recuse yourself in this matter?
You may sit, Mr. Phillips, or I'll ask you to leave.
I just want to know.
Thank you.
Am I not going to be allowed to speak in a public meeting?
Next, madam, next item on the agenda, request by Coastal Vineyards and Westport Rivers to sell at the Hingham Farmers Market. Mark Cullings.
Shall we do? Thank you, everybody. I'm Mark Cullings, 44 Spring Street, and I'm accompanied by Dave Nielsen from Coastal Vineyards, who is one of the two applicants who that we would hope we can get accepted into the farmers market. The representative from from Westport Rivers Vineyard texted me just a moment ago. She left the farmers market in Somerville at 5 o'clock, and that is not that is not Yvonne. And she's on her. She said there is a problem at exit 15. We all know that. So she's trying very hard to be here too. But as you know, we have the market has for several years wanted to expand its offerings to include Massachusetts farm wineries at the market, and we have been working with the trustees of the Bathing Beach, and they signaled earlier this year that we should come before your board to hopefully get approval for this, and that I'm hopeful that the trustees who have the authority over the beach and what happens will see fit to allow us to have farm wineries at the market. And I'm happy to answer questions about the program if you have them. And I know Dave,
I'm here.
Yvonne, welcome.
Welcome.
We have.
Hi, sorry it took me 2 hours to get here from Somerville.
So sorry.
So, how are you?
Of course.
Thank you. How are you? Good.
It's good to see you.
Okay, well, thank you. Preliminarily, yeah, we had a report from the police
Yes.
on this, and
It's in the
does the letter of May 5th constitute their assessment of this issue?
Yes.
Is the proposal in compliance with existing state statute?
Yes.
And can you just describe briefly what the proposed operation would consist of for the benefit of the public?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
This is a program instituted by Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. I don't know how many years it's been in.
2010.
Okay. The program it has a very robust set of regulations that a farmer's market or any venue must go through, but specifically a farmer's market. The farmer's market has to be designated by the state as an agricultural event. We are. the vineyards who are interested have to be actually invited by the market. We have done that. We are required to have a specific location for the space that they will be selling. We have done that. We've complied with all of the steps. The vineyards themselves make application to the state, and I'm told by Westport and Coastal that all of those regulations have been complied with on our end, and of course they have their own regulations that they have to comply with as well. We intend, just to continue that, to have one 10 by 10 foot space at the market, in the market footprint, that's contiguous with the manager's tent, or as we know as the Friends of the Farmers Market tent, and that will be the space at which the sales will take place. Chief Olsson has indicated his, I believe, I don't want to speak for him, but I have the letter, a copy of the letter, that he is supportive of this as long as there is no tasting, and the vineyards are aware of that as well.
Okay. Questions from my colleagues?
Sure. First, Mark, congratulations to you.
You're going to, they just wanted the car, Paul.
Very, very proud of you, and I'm very happy for you.
Thank you very much.
So, not being familiar with the law, but having a copy of it, so we fit under one of under Chapter 138 that allows us, subject to our approval, and obviously the Bathing Beach trustees' approval.
The trustees' approval is up to them. I don't have that yet. I have their permission to come to you first as the alcohol approving authority.
But the legislature has enacted a statute that allows
Yes.
local licensing authorities to approve this type of activity.
Yes.
And it looks like in the letter from the police chief that there's a limit on the amount of wineries.
Yes, we have two. And they will, we haven't discussed this in detail, but my expectation is that they will alternate weeks so that we have the presence at the market virtually every week from the time we get approval.
And I was looking it over again in terms of the letter. Is there some limit in terms of sampling and so forth?
There will be no sampling.
Okay. That's great. And is this done in other communities? I'm assuming it is, but...
Yes. Maybe the two of you can speak.
We were actually one of the first ones to be involved in the legislative change back in 2010. We actually started in the winter of 2011, so that was the first farmers market that began the process. We typically, between each of us, we probably do about 10 markets a week. They may be alternating, like this one. Some are done once a month, but typically it's an alternating type process.
Okay, thank you.
It's helpful for me to have the information from the chief. He's also requested that insurance and liabilities be included in the application process and proof of alcohol awareness training for each person selling the wine. So I see you nodding your heads, which suggests to me that...
We're both
Yep.
we're both SEP certified. And we have the liability insurance as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was my only question.
Do you have vineyards within the Commonwealth?
Yes.
Where are they located?
Mine's in South Dartmouth, Mass. And
Westport, Mass. We're neighbors.
Yep.
Okay.
One of the things that...
Red or white?
Yes.
Both.
Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
Mostly white.
Okay. We have the trustees here. Do the trustees wish to speak? Or are you simply observing until we decide?
Observing.
Okay, all right. Anyone from the audience like to pipe in? All right, well, I think it's fairly straightforward. an application here, I'll entertain a motion.
I would just say before doing that, that I had the occasion to speak to one of the trustees a few weeks ago, just in a, we kind of ran into each other and had a brief conversation about this, and I appreciated the concerns that were relayed to me, and I would just say that that was helpful in terms of my asking questions and getting information in terms of understanding how this would operate. So I very much appreciate the conversation.
Could I just, one quick question? And if there are concerns, I know the trustees are here, I'd probably like to hear them before I vote, but if there isn't a necessarily concern that you need to raise, that's fine, but I don't want to vote on it and then find out you had some serious concerns.
Again, they're essentially the ones that the chief raised.
Oh.
So that we make, there's no testing, tasting at the thing, we don't want open bottles. I mean, that was our primary concern.
Sure.
And we fully agree that this is an agricultural use, and the law says that, but we just want to make sure the selectmen were on board and that there was a due process.
Yes.
The chief was, the selectmen were, and then they came once again.
And I think, the question of liability came up, and again, that was helpful for me in just reviewing the materials to see that the liability questions were sufficiently addressed to protect the town's interests.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the application of David Nelson doing business as Coastal Vineyards for a Chapter 138, Section 15F special license for the sale of its wine products at the Hingham Farmers Market on Saturdays beginning June 4th, 2016 and ending November 19th, 2016, as outlined in the notice of approval. Sampling of its wine products will not be permitted. This vote is contingent upon the approval of the trustees of the bathing beach.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Hingham.
Thank you.
So I think we have a second.
We have a second motion here while Mr. Cullings is present.
Can I make that motion? Oh,
Sure, if you would.
Sure, I'll make the motion to approve the application of Westport Rivers, Inc. for a Chapter 138, Section 15F special license for a sale of its wine products at the Hingham Farmers Market on Saturdays, beginning on June 4th, 2016, and then November 19, 2016, as outlined in the notice of approval. Sampling of its wine products will not be permitted. This vote is contingent upon the approval of the trustees of the bathing beach.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Welcome to Hingham.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you at the
Forward to
market.
seeing you there.
We're running a little behind, but at this time, I would invite Hingham Fire Chief Robert Olsson and Deputy Fire Chief Stephen Murphy to join us at the table. Update us with some good news. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome.
Good evening.
Welcome.
We're just here tonight to report on you a favorable outcome on a regional assistance to firefighters grant that we entered into with our Shrek partners, Hull, Cohasset, and Norwell, and also had a fifth town asked to join our regional effort. One of the most important pieces of apparatus in the firefighters' protective ensemble is the self-contained breathing apparatus. And during our regional meetings that we have once a month, all of us started talking that we're coming to the end of life for the existing equipment, and all of us are in the process of trying to find ways to fund and replace the equipment. Out of that thought process came the idea to approach this regionally instead of as individual towns. So with 5 towns working together, we applied for an AFG grant and were successful in getting that. I'd like to have Deputy Chief Murphy explain some of the specifics on that grant to you, and also how the awarding of this grant benefits the town of Hingham.
Okay, thank you. So specifically, the grant total that the 5 communities received, and this is money from the federal government, it's through FEMA Assistance to Firefighters grants. The total amount was $848,182. I'm sorry, $848,182. which of that, there's a 10% match to all of the communities. So combined, the total match is $84,000 amongst those. Now, the way we had it broken down is that different communities, based on the size of the department, were coming into it needing different amounts and everything else. So Hingham's specific portion is the federal is providing $189,000 to us. Then we have a match of $21,000 for total equipment of $210,000 specifically for the town of Hingham. Now, as the chief mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of our equipment was already getting to the end of life cycle, especially the air cylinders themselves. So this year in the budget cycle, we had asked and were approved for $62,000 on a basically, which would have allowed us to replace all of the cylinders that we have, the air tanks themselves, and also to upgrade the masks to a safer, new, higher temperature rated mask. So the town gave us the $62,000. Of that, we will use the $21,000 out of that portion of it. We may need to use an additional portion of that $62,000, but we have a very good feeling that we will not need the full amount, so we'll be returning some of that to the town. In addition, what's even better is for FY20, we had already requested $180,000 to replace all of the units, and that number can go off the table, and that was 180 was in today's dollar. So realistically, by the time FY20 came, we probably would have been coming back to you requesting at least $200,000 or a little bit more to replace all those, and that's the great news, is that that number can just get crossed right off. Some other things about this, as the chief mentioned, I feel one of the reasons that we were successful in this is the regional approach, because the assistance to firefighters, it's a national program. Last year they gave out about $300 million. This year so far they do it in different stages. They've given out about $53 million, and the regional approach is something that they're encouraging. So by doing the region, and we felt that we weren't just 5 communities that said, hey, we're neighboring communities, let's do this together. We have legitimate operational, matches between us, and we actually can show that we are kind of part of a region. Because of that, we actually bypassed the first phase of this whole selection process, which is a computer-generated phase, which looks at the community's financial need for some of these things, and ours was automatically just put right to the person that starts reviewing these. So the regional aspect definitely was a huge advantage for us. And like I said, to be perfectly honest with you, we both know this, that if we applied for this as an individual town, we would not be sitting here telling you this right now tonight. So the Shrek has definitely come through for us in this situation. What else? I think that's about it. So like I said, this is this is going to allow us to replace equipment that most of which was purchased in 2002, and it's actually working off of standards that were approved in 1997. Since those standards get updated every 5 years. So the equipment that we're getting is modern, it's very safe, the safest stuff that's out there for our firefighters, and it will hopefully serve us for the next 15 to 20 years like our old equipment did.
Even more importantly, the fact that we operate so closely with the other communities, there's a certain familiarization and interoperability if we all have the same basic equipment. And the acceptance of this grant, or winning this grant, is actually a big step forward in that. And it has a nice benefit for the communities as well.
Absolutely. Congratulations on this.
Thank you.
Does that mean that there's going to be a 5th community joining the dispatch?
That's an interesting discussion. We've been talking with other communities, and truthfully, I think all of the host communities would love to bring in the community. And Situate has expressed interest, as have Rockland, but we're not making any announcements.
Okay, so they're joining in on this application for the grant, but still talking about the other.
Small steps.
Sure, sure.
We're trying to show them the benefit of Shrek beyond just the dispatch service, and this was a key example. Again, I mean, this was really a regional thing that we were able to tout this for. So.
And who was the author of the application?
It was a joint effort amongst different people from the 5 communities. So.
I will tell you that Andy Thomas from Hull headed up the effort, who's the deputy chief in Hull, and Deputy Chief Steve Murphy was critical in writing at least 2 of the narratives required for the grant. So they should take the lion's share of the credit.
Well done, Deputy.
Question. Deputy, can you talk a little bit about the, or tell us, was this a competitive grant and how competitive it may have been?
Yeah, like I said, so from what I can find, they've been releasing the information in spurts. And so, like I mentioned, last year there were about 300 million was given out total, and this process goes until about August, at least from last year. They had about 2,200 recipients. So far in the process, we were granted this on the 3rd round. They've awarded 370 awards across the country for 53 million. The average award is 144,000. We got 848,000. We're actually the second highest award that's been given out there. There's one award for, I think it was Alaska, for 150,000. Of those, there's only 18 other grants so far in the state of Massachusetts. So we know a lot of other, even regional grants that were those semi-regional grants that a couple of neighboring communities went in together. They have not received those yet. I don't know that doesn't mean that they won't in the future, but so far we're very happy to be in this list. So.
Excellent.
Can you give me the 5 towns again?
Yep.
Hull, Hingham, Cohasset, Norwell, and then Situate asked to participate, and we took them in. We figured 5 was better than 4.
I commend you on doing a regional approach. I know that seems to be working in a lot of different ways with different groups. I know the substance abuse prevention group that we've been working as a coalition, as you know, Chief and Deputy, that in its cooperative effort pays dividends well beyond the grants. It's just it's a good practice.
Eric?
I would just add my congratulations, and I'm glad that I think this is an example of many of our departments who are proactively looking for grants and ways to make our federal and our state, bring our federal and state tax dollars back here to our community. So I thank you for your continued efforts to do that.
Welcome.
It's good to see a grant writer on the team.
See that? Once you get pegged, they'll be coming back to you.
All right, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Let's get back to fighting fires. Okay, next. Cable TV Advisory Committee, revised bylaws. Ms. Sandra Peavey joining us at the table.
Thank you, and I'd like David Jones to...
Along with Mr. Jones.
Because I want to introduce him to you, although I think you have met him before.
Yep, I've seen him before.
Yes, he has been here before.
Good evening.
First I'll introduce him. The committee has voted to make him the new chair of the committee, and I will be the vice chair of the committee. Basically, a trainer to train him on all of the things that the committee chair has to do. And I'm so happy that he has to take this position, because I think I have held it longer than enough. I've been chair, I think, about 6 years. That's more than enough. So I'm really happy to introduce David.
Okay.
And I hope he will have many occasions to visit with you all. Anyway, we did a little research on the history of the committee, sort of preparatory to entering into new negotiations with both Verizon and Comcast, which have just started with Verizon and will be starting very soon with Comcast. The state provides a 3-year period for these renewal negotiations. So Verizon's license expires in 2018 and Comcast in 2019. So we're just getting going on that, and I understand at some point tonight you will approve the attorney who will be assisting us on that. Anyway, preparatory to that, we did some research. I did some at Town Hall, and Skylar Thaxter, who was on one of the early committees, I think in the 1990s, did some negotiations, some research also, and we couldn't find anything before 1988, and Sky came up with the bylaws from 1988, which he found somewhere. And we read them, and gee, that's not anything like what we're doing now. So we undertook to rewrite them, and that's what we have given to you to ask you to approve. And I wrote a memo. I'll just summarize it very briefly. We gave the background of the committee. Figured all that research we should share with somebody. And the proposed changes, I guess mostly it's the purpose of the committee. In 1988, there was only one cable provider, and that was American Cable Systems, which ultimately was taken over by Comcast. I don't think directly. I think there was another one in between. And there was sort of public channels run by Comcast, not very well, out of a station in Norwell. So there was very little going on in the public government and educational access. The selectmen's meetings were filmed and were broadcast, but none of them live, of course. And that was really about it. So during the last negotiations, we negotiated for and received $400,000 from Verizon and $200,000 from Comcast to establish some really great public government and educational access channels. We got 3 channels from both of them, so we can have one for each of them. Previously, there were only 2. That's all they wanted to give us at first, but we insisted we had to have 3. And over the period of time, the selectmen established what we call HCAM, Hingham Cable and Media. First, they ran the public access channel, and then the selectmen added the government access channel, and more recently, they added the educational channel. So the committee has been very heavily involved in all of that. Initially, the committee pretty much ran the PEG access for the first couple of years before there was an HCAM. We had a town employee part-time, and we had volunteers that we got from the town. But we really needed to have a really good PEG access, because that was our vision when we negotiated all this money. For the cable committee, we had the money sitting in the town accountant is in charge of that. It has 2 accounts. One, a capital account, which is where the $400,000 and $200,000 went, and then an operating account, which is a monthly, actually quarterly payments from each of the providers. They provide 4.2% of cable revenues from Hingham subscribers go into that. It averages roughly about $400,000 a year. So managing that money sort of became a job of the committee by default, because nobody else was managing it. And we had advice from the people who ultimately took over HCAM on what we should spend the capital money on initially. And the very first thing we did was upgrade the town facilities, upgrade the cameras and all of the equipment in here, the audio, everything, so that the selectmen's meetings would be really nice and clear. Everyone would love watching them, as they do. I'm serious. I live on, and every time I'm on here, people will be stopping me in the hall for the next week saying, "Oh, I saw you on television." And that makes me so happy that those people are actually watching the selectmen's meetings, because I think that's important, that they feel a part of the town of Hingham. And then we put cameras in essentially now all of the other meeting rooms, and we've upgraded the facilities that are located in the closet on the 3rd floor that are used to broadcast the now all 3 channels. initially the government and public. And then actually one of our committee members said, hey, you know, we need to have a better educational channel. And so we said, okay, let's get going on that. And Sky Faxter, who used to be with the schools until he retired and taught the TV production classes, he volunteered to take on that job, and he has worked with HCAM. And when I say work, he really works. He spends a lot of time with the people there. He has the person who's assigned to the educational channel. He's introduced him to all the appropriate school people, and he's helped him with identifying needs and things that can be broadcast. And Dot Gallo just jumped right in, and she's got a great program that they put on about once a month. It's just really excellent. If you haven't watched it, you should watch her program. So I think right now we have a really vibrant public, educational, and government, and that's what we've done with the money. So that's something that is an important thing for the committee to do, is to manage this money. So we wanted all of these things to be in here. Recently, the selectmen gave us the job of essentially doing the work on the renewals, the license renewals. So one of the items and the purposes is to carry out any tasks delegated by the Board of Selectmen. That's the big one right now. So I've written a memo on the proposed changes. As I say, the biggest one is the purpose, and I think the others are self-explanatory, but if you would like to ask some questions about them, maybe that's the best way to go about this.
Sandra, the memo here, the purpose that's described on page 2, in the bylaws themselves, that's captured in Roman numeral 2, points 1 to 6?
Right.
Okay, so this is just a memo that was sort of descriptive in nature?
Right.
Okay. I had noticed that there were references to the 2 cable providers, and I don't see that in the revised bylaw, which I think is better, just because those companies are changing all the time.
That's right.
I did have one question for you, and that is the committee membership. According to the bylaw, it's proposed no fewer than 5 and no more than 9 committee members. And the reason that kind of stood out to me a little bit is that I think, other than the Affordable Housing Trust, most of our committees have a set membership size. And I wondered, I just wondered if maybe you could comment on that a little bit, because it is inconsistent a little bit with most of our other standing committees.
Okay. Right now, we have 5 members with a school department member who has been attending all of the meetings, and hopefully, if the bylaws are approved, will become an official member of the committee, which would then make it 6. The original bylaws in 1988 had a 9-member committee. So we thought, well, we better have it at least 9 members, because that's what the bylaws had provided, with 9. And as we get into the negotiations of 2 contracts, we've got 2 contracts going at the same time, I think that the selectmen should appoint more members to the committee. What makes it a little bit difficult is that each of our committee members has a particular expertise that makes them really valuable to the committee. And we'd like to see the selectmen find similar members. In particular, I would like to see someone with financial expertise. We have one person now, and I'm hoping the selectmen will reappoint him, because I don't know how we're going to get through these negotiations if you don't, because we really rely on Eric Connerly for analyzing this money that we're taking care of here, and he will just be invaluable in negotiations. But we need to get somebody else on board with a similar or equivalent financial background to essentially learn the ropes, this would be a particularly good time because we're just going into the negotiations. And so therefore, such a person would be able to learn as we go along here. And when Eric gets tired of doing all of this, then we'll be prepared and ready to take over.
What I might ask the new chair is, as you know, and as you know, we're about to go through the talent bank process.
Yep.
And so what I might ask the committee is that each year around this time, as we're coming up on the talent bank, that I think what would help our board is if you could inform us, hey, you know, given where we are with the contract and things, we think it would be helpful to have another member. And the reason I say that is because I think that decisions about committee members and appointments need to be driven by the work of the committee. And when you have a range of committee membership, I don't want us in a situation where it appears that we're being subjective about applicants. And so understanding that there's some dynamics with your committee, please let us know. Please let us know if you're looking to you know, appoint a few others, and again, some of the specialized skills. And we're actually beginning interviews next week. And so the timing of all this is very helpful. I might, if I may, just ask one other question. The room that is directly behind us, which is the other hearing room, that right now does not have any camera capability.
Oh, well, what we have done with that one is we have new equipment that has mobile cameras on it, and that can be used.
Okay.
Put those in and you plug it into the wall, because we put plugs in all of the meeting rooms so that you can plug the equipment to videotape, and you can actually broadcast live from there.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, because I do know, and thanks to your committee and HCAM's great work, there are more committees and town business being televised, and I think the people's ability to watch those meetings is leading to increased demand for other committees. So when we have a circumstance where we have a few committee rooms that are being used at the same time, you know, broadcast one live, tape a few others.
Right. And we can do that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
How are we doing? Congratulations. Thank you.
Yes, congratulations, yeah.
Your service, Sandra. And still, thank you for sticking with us.
Yeah.
Just a follow-up to Mary's question. In '88, we had 9 members of the committee. And is there a reason why it went down to 5? Is it?
It was a lot of work in the earlier, I mean, this 1988 is when we set up HCAM. I mean, the amount of work that the committee has done was much greater than we're doing now, although it's ramping up with the ascertainment, so.
Right. As there was less work that the committee was doing in the last few years, and when people went off the committee, they weren't replaced. I think we had, during the last negotiations, I think we had 7 or 8 on the committee, 7 plus a school representative on the committee, but 9 would not be too many.
Sure. No, I am of the belief that the more active people in the community are, and the more opportunity they have, you know, with a 9-member board, if you have a lot of work, if you need people, assuming people want to do that type of volunteer work, you know, it would be great to have those spots filled, especially if there's a need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And just in terms of the amendment to the bylaws, you did talk about monitoring expenditures and so forth. Is there anything else that any major difference from what you had before that we should be aware of?
Well, really what you had before, and I don't even know whether you have a copy of this, do you know, Betty?
You may have one in the file.
Somewhere.
Sure.
Yeah, this came out of some files anyway. But I can let you have it so that you can
make a copy.
It took us a while to find
it. Right. It was just very general. I'll just read it. Monitor the progress and operation of the town's cable company for compliance to terms of the final license, And 2, advise the Board of Selectmen, the issuing authority, in cable TV matters and report recommendations. So there was no money to monitor, and we thought it was important to make sure that the money was specifically in there so that no one would forget that it had to be monitored.
Well, the good thing is, it sounds like that you've detailed and maybe expanded a little bit to the benefit of all, I think, what the committee's doing, with a greater explanation of who's doing what and what their duties are. So I think knowing what minimal type of bylaw was in place before and what I see here, I understand now, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your explanation and your work, both of you, as well as the committee generally. I notice now that when you want to watch a meeting that's been taped, you have to go to YouTube. Are we going to get that fixed, or are we on YouTube from now on?
This is from the HCAM page.
You can get to the, HCAM puts everything on YouTube after it's been broadcast in Hingham, and you can get to it that way. A problem is that we're not allowed to use cable funds for internet streaming. That's a federal law. And HCAM, on the other hand, they have explained to me that it costs them nothing to put this on YouTube.
Okay.
Once they're making the tape and putting it on, or the DVD, whatever they do, and putting it on, to put it on YouTube is like press of a button and it goes on
Just
YouTube.
uploads it.
And that way people can get it whenever they want to. The HCAM does play all of the meetings multiple times, and you can go on their website and find out their schedule, and so you can see when the selectmen's meetings will be on television, if that's how you want to watch them. And many people do. There are older people anyway who don't have computers. There's lots of my friends at Linden Bonds don't know how to use YouTube, but others of them do, and the young people I know all do. But that's the explanation for it.
Okay.
If we could ever get the federal law changed, that would be great.
I would echo Mary's comments about televising or filming these meetings, because there are some meetings that I'd like to just observe, just to have a better understanding of something that may end up eventually in our bailiwick, and it's a little frustrating when it's, we just don't have that.
Yeah.
So to the extent you can expand the coverage of the meetings, I'd encourage it.
Okay, and we are also working, because you mentioned it last time I was here, very hard on trying to figure out a way to get HD television. We have SD now, and the quality is not as good as HD. So that is, in fact, we have one committee member who has just taken this on, and
He's not going to let it go either.
he's going like gangbusters. He's researched, he knows everybody in Massachusetts who's got HD. Everybody in the whole country, I think he's found out who's got HD and who doesn't, and he's working hard on this. And once we get the new lawyer on board, I think we will talk to him about how we can best do that, either through these negotiations or even before, if it's possible.
Is that Mr. Solomon?
Mr. Solomon, yes. I think he's on the agenda.
You're on the
be
agenda.
approved.
Is he a gentleman that you've worked with before?
Yes, he is the lawyer who negotiated both the Verizon contract and the renewal of the Comcast contract that we're in right now.
Okay.
And so he has a lot of background on this. He did an exceptional job on those two contracts. I think we got more money for Hingham than anybody else in the state. I mean, I haven't actually checked, but pretty close. Most towns did not get that much money to set up a PEG
And this
access program.
May 31st, 2016 letter from Mr. Solomon needs to be countersigned, and then it becomes operative?
Yes, I talked to Mr. Mayo about that. Did you get the letter done to cover both of those? Yes, so
Okay.
then we can get going on that.
Questions from my colleagues?
So,
Let's do a vote then. Can I have a motion to accept the revisions to the Cable TV Advisory Committee's bylaws as voted by the committee at its March 2016 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I have a motion to sign a letter of engagement with Attorney William Solomon related to cable license renewals.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much for all
Thank
your
you
hard
again,
work.
Thank you for coming.
please thank the committee, the rest of the committee for us as well.
I don't even know if we need it. You can get it after Dave.
I've got a copy of that.
He has a copy, okay?
Great, thank
That's
you very
yours.
much.
Thanks.
Okay, next matter on the agenda is a discussion of the comment letter regarding the Alliance 40B proposal. It's dated June 1st, 2016. It's addressed to Jessica Malcolm, who's a 40B specialist in Mass Housing. And assuming it's acceptable to the board, I will sign, and it will be mailed.
So just maybe as way of context for the audience, because 40Bs have become something that we've all been learning about. When a 40B, and help me with this, Paul, but when a 40B project is filed, typically a 40B project is seeking from a subsidizing agency something called a project eligibility letter. And that's basically one of the state subsidizing agencies will grant a project eligibility letter, and that's a requirement to pull a permit locally. And the way I understand it kind of from council is that that makes sure that when a 40B application comes to the town, it's kind of ready to go, and it doesn't waste a lot of time here. So when a project eligibility, so when a subsidizing agency receives a request for a project eligibility letter, they then give the town 30 days to kind of comment on it. And so the town has the ability to say, you know, here's some things that we have concerns about the project, here's some things that we maybe like about the project, here's some things we don't like. And, you know, we're so fortunate to have Emily Wentworth, who is just so talented in many ways. And one of the things that Emily's explained to me and to others is that with respect to some of these project eligibility letters, there are only certain criteria that the subsidizing agency pays attention to. So, for example, if we said, well, gosh, this development might have a big impact on the schools, that's not something that the subsidizing agency is interested in. So the things we can typically comment on are things like traffic, environmental, conservation, site impact, traffic. And so this letter used to, I think, come from the community planning group, and we started a practice as a board earlier this year where this board actually publicly reviews, discusses, and votes on these letters as a way to give them a little bit of visibility. So this particular letter relates to what I think people know as the Alliance Project, which is on the site that is currently where Hingham Mutual is situated.
Correct.
So Emily Wentworth has put this letter together for us to review and comment. She will then send it to the subsidizing agency, who will take it into consideration in their determination of whether or not to issue a project eligibility letter. So,
Very well
thanks
explained, actually. There's nothing further to add.
Well,
although this letter is superb in its detail and a description of what's there, what's proposed, what the town has done with respect to its ongoing effort to meet both in terms of the letter and the spirit of creating affordable housing within our community. And but in addition to that, it also speaks to the anticipated impacts that we'd have should such a project be approved or submitted and eventually approved. This is a more relaxed review that the ZBA, as the issuing board, would have to undergo by virtue of the law, Chapter 40B, in exchange for greater density or greater affordable housing units allows for greater density. So what Emily has done, along with the assistance of Susan Murphy, has highlighted to Mass Housing some of the significant impacts that exist should such a project be permitted down off of Beale Street. And not just on Beale Street itself, but also on Lincoln Street, the fields, the Bear Cove Park, which we heard from in some great detail at a meeting that we held earlier this year. And then we've also talked about the public safety impacts that we would anticipate would occur. We did this on the Avalon project as well, just as Mary outlined, and we do this on all 40B applications that are brought before the town. But to those that are interested, I commend this reading. It's a 6-page letter, well-written, and it would give a very clear understanding of what we're dealing with when we're down there going forward. I should just remind you that we are going to assert certain defenses, but it's a temporary relief at best. So this is something, the 40B issue is something that we are going to have to continue to address at a number of different venues. But this certainly alerts Mass Housing to the specifics of this particular site. And, you know, I'm not sure what the response of the applicant will be, but, you know, it's been articulated at some level at the public meetings. This is the town's formal position at this point. And we're just going to sign off and send it in.
Just briefly, and I obviously I want to thank Emily and Susan for their work, and talking with Betty and Tom today, I think there were a number of department heads that all added their assistance, and I don't know specifically who, so I'm going to thank everybody. I'm not leaving anybody out, but I certainly don't want to miss anybody. And and Paul made some good points, obviously, kind of as a follow-up what Mary had to say about in terms of what may happen in the future, and I think it's important to tell folks that, again, this is all a process, right. That, you know, if there's defenses, so to speak, or safe harbors, so to speak, or that the town can employ, they are temporary, and for better or for worse, the process may afford proponents a longer period of time than we have defenses, so we have to be obviously trying to think outside the box, or anticipating, preparing, and looking out for the interests of not only Beale Street residents and Lincoln Street residents, but the whole town. So it's an ongoing process. One thing I'll just say that I wasn't aware of, but it's interesting to note that based on the information in our letter, Hingham renter households grew by 74% from 2000 to 2010, whereas renter households by just 5.4% in Plymouth County and 2.6% statewide. So I think in many respects we've done above and beyond in terms of creating housing, and our goal always is to create a reasonable amount of affordable housing, and we try to do that in responsible ways. So again, I want to thank everybody that participated in putting this together, and look forward to following up on this down the line.
Yeah.
Can I just add one more thing? You know, we saw this project. We were downstairs. There's a room full of people. There were a lot of concerns raised. Concern about the size of this, concern about the density, concerns about the look. When I see what was sent to the subsidizing agency, I feel like the developers didn't listen to a single word that any of us said. And that's frustrating to me. And that was not our experience with the development that we recently approved. So that's all I'm going to say about the project.
Yeah, I'd also add that this is a project that brings, as does every project, but this particular project brings, I think, unique components of concern because it's located right near the Bear Cove Park. And there's also a historically significant archaeological site that may be impacted as well. You know, in terms of what we saw, I forget when that was, in February, maybe? I don't know, when Alliance came in. You know, it's a conceptual iteration. You know, they are relying on the significant power that a 40B submittal brings to an applicant, but we've been dealing with this particular form of development now for almost 20 years, and we have an excellent board in place to address it. So this is our end of it. Ultimately, as I've said repeatedly on prior occasions, the Zoning Board of Appeals will make a decision on this. Their decisions are in compliance with the law, and we'll keep you posted. So, I don't know if we need to do a formal motion on something like this. Is there a motion? I don't think there is. So we'll be signing that off, and off we go. Okay, we have Mr. Menendez, Mr. Peralt, and Mr. Johnson. You're here on the Seaport Economic Council grant application? There's no hot seat tonight, gents. Just talking. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening. Thank you.
Welcome.
So today, we wanted to come to you and talk to you about a grant that's now available to the town of Hingham. But in order to get into that, like maybe to provide you with a little context, last year, last spring, the town actively pursued a proposal process to seek a vendor to construct and pay for the construction and lease a bathhouse / concession stand at the bathing beach. Bear in mind, this is all consistent with what's in the 2007 master plan, Harbor Master Plan. And we did receive a respondent at that time. That respondent was Sullivan's. We met with them. We went through a proof of concept with them, at which point it sort of fell apart, not because of the actual approach, but rather they were, because they had to build the building and finance the construction, it became a problem for them. So what we did after that is we looked at other means of funding the project, construction funding the project, and we looked toward the Seaport Economic Development Council. So in the late summer, early fall of last year, we went through a process of applying for a grant with the Seaport Economic Development Council to seek funding for the bathhouse / concession stand building somewhere in the Inner Harbor. We received some positive feedback from them early on. They indicated to us that we were shortlisted, for lack of a better word. We presented to the Seaport Council in February of this year, with the Lieutenant Governor being there as the chair, and other members consisting of mayors and other municipal officials in the Commonwealth. And at that meeting, we were notified that indeed they were going to award the town of Hingham the grant, and the grant total is $700,000 to go towards, again, the construction associated with the bathhouse / concession stand. So one of the things we have to do is enter into contract with the Seaport. Both Betty and Tom have a copy of that contract, and report to them as the project moves forward, as we have on other grants. And again, go through a proof of concept with respect to the building. We're not there yet, but the first step would be to obviously accept the grant.
Well, I guess my first reaction is congratulations for your hard work on this. It's great news. Without having a conceptual iteration, it's a little harder to kind of wrap around the idea other than you want to build something down there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I guess I have a question. Is it limited to just a structure? Could you build a structure that has some kind of walkway out into the harbor, or is it we talking strictly a structure within a certain distance from the water line?
Well, they haven't provided any limitations in terms of how far we are from the water. There are permitting conditions associated with anything that we do, and depending on where we are, among other things. But anything associated with the construction of the building itself would fall under the guise of the application.
I might pitch in one thing on that, Mr. Chairman, if I could. The other thing is, you're aware, part of the reason this is well received is because of the other things we've already done down there. I think they realize this is part of a long-term plan. It's been in the queue for a while. We did the revetment a year ago. Many of you, I assume you've all seen the work on the beach stabilization, which has been very well received as the first boardwalk aspect we have. And, you know, Roger bid that out in a way we get very competitive bidding. We've got a little bit of money left in that account to do the parking lot. We pulled the parking lot out of it. So really, to answer your question, we have some money in that account that may peripherally deal with some of the, you know, connecting that walkway to wherever this building ends up being. Because in my mind, it's still part of the big picture of the parking lot. And we're even thinking of holding the parking lot paving off till next year. Rather than pave it now, you don't want to bring a concrete truck in after we regrade and redo the parking lot and have, you know, the heaviest truck you can bring in ruin the parking lot. So, and we have utilities. That was one of the other hang-ups with Sullivan's, was the idea of bringing utilities here. We think we can probably do it better as a town than a private party can going across 3A with the utilities and the like. Big part of the proof of concept is where this building goes, whether the soil's suitable. But I think we've got a little bit of wiggle room with some of the other contract we have in doing some landscaping treatment around this building, so it's not just a hollow building that's stuck there. So hopefully that fills out.
Would the constraint be limited to the property under the jurisdiction of the trustees?
Well, the parking lot has to be. I mean, we'd have to have it served by our lot because of the restrictions on the boat ramp parking lot, which can't be used, which is supposed to be exclusively for, you know, the use of the boat ramp. So our thought is one way or the other, it's going to be served off our parking lot. And since we have the traffic signal, that was the attraction thing to Sullivan's last year, was that we've got a signalized spot to get in and out of 3A. Another reason the farmers market likes our lot, you know. So our thought is the proof of concept. We're going to look at different locations. The first thing will be the engineering thing to see where the soils are. But I think it'll at least be off of our parking lot in some way, shape, or form, I'd imagine. Accessible to our parking lot. It would have to be.
So I'm not sure where this fits in the timing, but I know when we discussed this as a warrant article, and we've discussed this, there's a question of where this structure will be located. And what I'm hoping you can do that won't slow your process down is to put some story poles up. In some way, I think it's going to be really important for people in the community to see where this structure is going to be located and kind of get a sense of its size. And the reason I say that is I want to avoid a circumstance where the foundation goes up and people are in some way surprised, disconcerted, feeling like they didn't have a voice in this.
Sure.
So I would ask at the appropriate time, when you've kind of evaluated options, to in some way, let's designate this, let's, you know, publicize it in the newspaper, let's put it on the website, and let's give ourselves a couple of weeks so that if there's any feedback that people have, good or bad, we get it before we go past the point of no return.
Sure.
Isn't there a height limitation down there, though, within the zoning bylaw?
Yeah.
Exclusive of mechanicals?
Yeah, it won't be any bigger than 1.5 stories. But I did just want to touch upon the process to this point, at least.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that's always difficult is when folks are hearing it for the first time, they assume it's the first time everyone else is hearing it. And what ended up happening on this particular project, I will tell you, we've met with the trustees, publicized on their agenda at least 5 or 6 different times. We've met with the Harbor Development Committee 3-4 times. There have been articles in the newspaper. CPC's heard it at least 2 or 3 times. And of course, town meeting was aware of this potential project as by way of a 20% match associated with the $700,000. Having said all that, it still requires conservation, and we're going to do more than that, obviously. But in terms of minimum requirements associated with just the permitting, we envision it's going to require at least a couple of meetings with the planning board, at least a meeting or 2 with the with the Conservation Commission, meeting with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then above and beyond that, both the trustees and the Harbor Development Committee, who is the group that you guys have sort of assigned to sort of deal with a lot of these harbor-related projects, regularly here where we are in the process.
It's in an historic district too, so the Historic District Commission is going to weigh in on the aesthetics.
And they may, yeah.
So we're required to go before
Yep.
the Historic Districts Commission as well.
And I think all that's great, and I know you're going to be real diligent about that. I would just add that I think for many people, people have a strong affinity to that waterfront, strong views about it. As a community, we've talked about keeping the water and the views accessible, not, kind of building up a lot of buildings as they do in other communities. And I think we, as much as, Sandra and the folks that were just here on HCAM do a great job, I think that there needs to be some visible way for people who traverse that route to be sort of made aware of it. Because I think through kind of the whole permitting process, you still have a whole lot of people who are interested who perhaps, aren't watching, aren't making the connection. And again, I just want to make sure that we don't have any kind of surprises once we get to the point where we're, constructing a facility.
We've had joint meetings of the Bathing Beach and the Harbor Development that HCAM has covered. So, and the way the RFP went out, we're in the process of finalizing the architectural firm. Part of the process of them is to do conceptualization first.
Great.
So that there would be renderings and visuals and things like that. It's kind of step one, and the firms that we shortlisted all have experience doing these kind of municipal waterfront structures and working in historic districts. So we realize the sensitivity, not only from a permit point of view, but there's going to be a lot of eyes on this project.
Yep.
And it's kind of like the Whitney Wharf Bridge. We kind of get one shot to get it right. We're going to live with this building for, the existing concrete building's been there for 50-odd years. We're hoping this is going to be architecturally attractive. The firms that looked at it were fascinated by this location and say you've got a potential for an iconic building there. So we understand the importance of this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. In terms of the step-by-step, we've got the grant has been awarded to us, is that correct?
Pending signing of the contract, yes.
Right. So are we voting to submit an application, or are we voting to approve the contract?
To accept the money to approve the contract, correct.
Okay. When I was reading our proposed motion, it was about something about a grant application, but I think the language may cover it.
I think we got one of the third largest grant, actually, from the Seaport Council this year. Yeah.
So, and you mentioned the RFP in the process with the architects. So if and when we approve the contract and sign off on it, what is the next step? So if people, again, I know Mary and I was talking about keeping people aware, what is next on the horizon that people should be aware of and may want to weigh in at some point?
I'll let Roger speak. Well, it's engineering first, which is probably not going to be too sexy for most people to weigh in on. It's going to be like soil testing and things like that,
I'm going to work my magic, make it sound sexy.
Take it away, Roger.
Oh, yeah, I can know how to do it. No, some of the things that we have to go through is just fitting it properly. And by that I mean there are as Alan mentioned, soil conditions that we have to consider. One of the locations, for example, there's in Phil Tidelands, which falls into Chapter 91. And traditionally, when you go into a location like that, you know that the soils are probably not great. It's not that it's not doable there, but it adds cost, fancy foundations and that kind of stuff. And then the permitting itself, so you have the soils conditions and the permitting itself. One location, you're in an AE, which is a flood zone, and you're not in Chapter 91. In the other location, you're in Chapter 91, but not in the AE zone. It sounds counterintuitive, but that's just the way the maps are drawn up. So the first step would be to go out and actually take some soil samples, take some borings, that takes care of sort of the first step in terms of what we'd have to deal with at any given site. And it would include a section, as you were asked about, Mr. Healy had asked, it would include a section in the selectmen's parcel, a section in the trustees' parcel, a section in the grove in terms of soil sampling. After that, we'd start placing a building, just showing a building at these different locations, starting to socialize that, and going through a charrette process that itemizes what's the pros and cons with each associated site. And what we're trying to do is be careful with our time and money with respect to the architect, and of course being able to spend the money in the proper amount of time allocated in the contract. And then begin to show, as we begin to socialize that location, we begin to show a rendering of the building at that given location. You would be able to see the elevation and what it would look like at the front of the water, and how it would fit at that location. And then once there was a settlement in terms of where it goes, then we'd get into something more detailed in terms of designing the building and doing all the work associated with that.
We also want to be sensitive to people on the other side of 3A in citing this. I mean, there's certain areas that are less, there's either a marsh on certain sides where we wouldn't affect anybody visually, but there's a number of issues that you have to look at, you know. There's, Mr. Ely remembers I was on the planning board with him. You can never take off your planning hat when you work in these type of projects. It's always there.
Sure.
You know?
But I will say, I mean, I get the sense, and my sense is usually pretty good, that we can get to a certain place, and believe me, if there's a decision on the town not to spend the rest of the money, and the $150,000 that's set aside by CPA will get us through this process that I just described, and we say to the state, you know what, the town's not for this. Thanks very much. You can have the $700,000 back. Believe me, they'd be more than willing to take it back, and there'd be a bunch of other people behind them willing to take it. So that option exists. So this is not a commitment to a project. This is a commitment to accept the money, to vet a project that we would have funding for if the town decides to move forward. So hopefully that
Kind of
would be.
put it in the bank account.
Yeah. There's always someone else waiting for a $700,000 grant, believe me.
Just while we're talking about it, in terms of the utilities, when does that come into play in the scheme of things? And is it, I know you, Alan, said it's more doable possibly from the town point of view than a private entity. Is that something we foresee as a problem, or is it just?
It's an excellent question. It's part of the engineering vetting of this, you know, and we broke out the engineering from the architectural, and the 3 engineering firms that Roger solicited have all had experience with us on the waterfront. You know, either CHA, Beals and Thomas,
DCI.
Or DCI. Every one of them has done work for us, so they already have kind of some knowledge base. We're leaning towards CHA, which has done the engineering analysis for Sullivan's. But it's a great, I mean, we do have some utilities on Ship Street, which isn't too far away. And my point is more like if we were to cross 3A or the town was trying to get an opening permit, probably easier than a private sector party. Doesn't mean it's easy, but we have to look at capacities and, you know, when you can open a road. Could you do another septic system if it was in a different location from our current one? But it's very early in the process because that then starts to push the building design. So it's a step 1, step 2, and the engineering we see as being critical.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does the Economic Council have a voice in what is actually built, or is this something that's decided by us?
It's decided by the town. We presented and provided them with some information in terms of schedule and what the town would be matching and the possible location. So they've actually seen a couple of different renderings and when I say rendering, I mean very limited, just a box on the site. And that's really it. We report back to them in terms of our spending, as I have done other grants that we've worked with before. But that's really...
They have no say-so in the design or whatever, so that they're comfortable with... It's more the concept that it would be a concession stand, restrooms, and we've talked about a small community room that rec department is already kind of interested in as, you know, something that they could use. Maybe you know, smaller than this, but, you know, probably like a 300 square foot multiple purpose room that would also have, and they were okay with that. That was part of what was attracted to them, is we were also going to try to highlight the maritime history of Hingham, and that was mentioned in the grant.
And I'm just curious as to how you presented the figure that they awarded, or did you project a cost that you estimated would be approximately $700,000 or some figure?
We projected that the project would be all in $900,000 roughly. You've got
Okay.
150 from CPA, and then 700,000 from, and it's a tight budget, by the way, from the Seaport. But one of the things that we looked at, and we'll have to discuss going forward, is the concessionaire is no longer financing the construction associated with the building. So that means there's potential for a lease agreement that would generate revenue. There's also potential for that lease agreement to go towards covering any shortfalls on the construction costs. So when we draft the RFP, I think what we'll probably end up doing is draft it such that there's a tiered lease agreement where if there's $100,000, say, capital cost investment in the building, that would reflect X amount of dollars in the lease, and so on and so forth. So the intent, though, is to have either this as an ability to generate some funds, but at the very minimum, cover all the costs associated with the project.
Okay, good.
And the big thing for me has always been to have restrooms open on a regular basis.
Sure.
Down there,
Yeah.
probably 9 months of the year. And we're also thinking the concession space, it's pretty much going to be a shell, as close to a shell as we can. So in order to make our dollars work, we're going to be building out our community room, the restrooms, but really giving them as much of a shell as we can so they can put their money in.
Somebody else will build it.
And that's around the number that Sullivan's had. They told us it was about 850 to 900,000. So it's pretty consistent with where we think it'll shake out.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Is that something we can count on, that the bathrooms will be open 9 months of the year? Is that something we're committed to? Or?
It would be open as long as the concessionaire would be. And our thought was the concessionaire in that location would probably want to be open at least as long as the farmer's market is, from at least spring till Thanksgiving or so. I mean, if you take Sullivan's as an example, Sullivan's now opens I think they're open by March 1st, and they don't close until after the day after Thanksgiving or the weekend of Thanksgiving. I think by us having a building too, we're going to have more competition for this concession thing, because Sullivan's had the wherewithal to kind of do it, and even they get scared off. But I think if you're going to say, look, you don't have to put a lot of your own money into this, and you're going to have a building, I think you'd have a number of vendors who would be attracted to this building.
And they would be issued, as part of the RFP, they'd be provided with the lease agreement. And in that lease agreement, the town would say, this is when you can be open. This is when you have to keep the, so the town will tell, they won't tell.
We retain the control.
You retain the control.
And but they clean the bathrooms, because it's going to give them their bathrooms. So that's the thing, is we at least have those covered and maintained, and the trash around that building not picked up by the town, picked up by the vendor, because he's going to have the benefit of the building for a large part.
Security.
And correct. Yeah.
Great job, great work. Look forward to seeing this evolve. Questions from the audience? I'll entertain a motion to submit the Seaport Economic Council grant contract and authorize the chairman to sign all necessary documents.
So moved?
Second. Can I just ask a question? In terms of the motion, does that cover us in terms of signing the contract? It says submitting a grant application.
I clarified it due to your question.
Oh, thank you. I didn't make the adjustment myself, but
Yep.
I seconded it, so.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Good hunting.
See you guys. Take care.
Guys, thank you.
Chairman, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but just, can we go back to the Alliance comment letter real quick?
Sure.
And can I ask that you add a motion and take a vote? Language being to send the comment letter as drafted and authorize the chairman to sign on the board's behalf.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Next is kind of a continuation of the expression of the town at town meeting, and this is a purchase and sale agreement between Declaration of Trust dated December 23rd, 76, and 72 South Pleasant Street Realty Trust. This is the Lehner property in the town of Hingham. This is a rather lengthy purchase and sale agreement that has been presented to us for signature. Betty and Tom, I assume that Real Estate Council has gone through this thoroughly. And
He's gone through it very thoroughly.
right. Couple of trees on this one. Do my colleagues have any questions on this? I mean,
I just have a brief question. I had a chance to go through it all. I know that Susan Murphy had worked on it and relied somewhat on that, and I'm obviously familiar with the purpose of it. Declaration of trust dated December 23, 1976, and 72 South Pleasant Street Realty Trust. Just, I assume, are those the sellers collectively?
Yes, together as seller.
Yeah, no, I see it in here. I was thinking there was one entity, but there's two.
it's like there's three.
It's three.
All right.
And I was just looking at the cover letter.
Yeah.
There were two entities listed on the cover. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
None.
I'll entertain a motion to sign the purchase and sale agreement for the Lehner property and authorize the chair to execute all necessary documents.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're moving on with that one. All right, we've got some votes. Entertain a motion to waive the permit fees associated with the high school cafeteria renovations. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know, we don't charge our own people permitting fees. So that's just why we're doing that. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to waive the permit fees associated with each school air-chilled water compressor.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to waive the permit fees associated with the South School boiler.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to waive the permit fees associated with the South School AC compressor.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to Hingham Maritime Center, Care Linda Kutch, for the Blessing of the Fleet to be held at the Hingham Maritime Center on Sunday, June 12, 2016, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to approve the issuance of a special one-day wine and malt beverages license to the South Shore Conservatory of Music, care of William Arvanites, excuse me, sir, if I've mispronounced your name, for the Summer Spotlight Concert Series at the South Shore Conservatory of Music from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on each of the following days, July 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Selectmen, Town Administrator reports. Tom, anything?
I have nothing, thank you.
Betty?
Nothing this evening.
Mary?
Nothing, thank you.
Paul?
Just briefly, I just want to make sure that I know Memorial Day passed. We had a great ceremony at the Town Hall, whether or not necessarily cooperating, and I know that to the fact that I didn't get to see or speak to any of the veterans either there or at Linden Ponds, I just wanted to let them know that, as always, but especially on Memorial Day, that they're my thoughts and prayers, and forever thankful for their service to our country.
I want to thank Mary for stepping forward after a long trip overseas and expressing the sentiments of the board. I had the privilege of attending a Memorial Day ceremony in Fort Polk, Louisiana, with two of my sons, one of whom stationed there. And my takeaway from this was that, you know, we all live in different parts of the country, but I think that there's a common bond of unity in recognizing the significant service of those that have passed from this world to the next in defense of our great country. So on that note, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At this point, I recommend that the board enter executive session to discuss strategy.
Before the session,
you know, we've had public comment, although it wasn't much of a comment. I'm sorry?
I think I heard 10 after, and that was over.
You know, Jim, in deference to you, sir, come on up. Hopefully, this won't blow up in my face.
Rockland Street. No, I
Yes.
just wanted to give the members copies of the extracts from the present open space plan on the proposed crossing from Great Esca Park to Bear Cove Park. I sent them all to the board quite a while ago, but I think things get mislaid.
Okay.
And so,
I appreciate that, Jim.
and, I talked to Alan Pavota about it quite a while ago, and he thought it was
Thank you.
feasible. We haven't really gotten into any design.
very much.
To the bottom.
Hundreds of times, it's time to take away money. And if you have to look at it, we'll get a couple of meetings. Thank you.
We will entertain that,
I
sir.
heard it. I heard it. Kept obeying the people.
Yeah, I hate when that happens.
Glad you
Thanks,
came.
Jim.
Give everybody one.
I have one. Thank you. You have one, Tom? Okay.
Jim, do you go on State Rep Murphy? He has a river cruise every year to kind of go along the back river to look at this area. And the reason I bring it up is that this is something that's important to him, and he's been trying to advance just a lot of coordination there. And if you're interested, typically in the next few weeks, we typically get an invitation to that event. And I'd love to pass an invitation on to you to see. You might find it interesting, and it might be that there's an opportunity to introduce this concept to Representative Murphy and perhaps, put it on his radar screen and integrate it into a bigger project.
Yeah, I sent this to him quite a while ago. What's a little confusing is that there's been money, well, Heather was behind, for crossings under 3A.
Yep.
Between Great Escort and Abigail Adams and between Bear Cove and Sutter. That's something you can do now if you're going to scramble. It's reach over 50%.
Yeah.
Our proposal, nothing against that, but I think connecting the two parks accomplishes a lot more. And I missed that trip. Scott McIsaac's the other person working on this, and he was on it.
He was on it last year, but as we typically get something, so maybe I think there's usually room for a couple more people. So if that's something, if you're available and interested, it might be helpful for you with this effort.
I mean, it bothered me that the other proposal didn't, the Zippers Club had sent to him some time ago. Yeah, that's the proposal to cross the space. No, it's the other proposal. Okay, that's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Send it to her.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
You could have my
Thanks, Jim.
seat on the tour if you need it. You could have my seat on the tour if you need it.
Oh, thank you. No, I don't want to sit beside you.
Oh, good.
Okay, I gave everybody one.
Okay, at this point in time, I'd recommend that the board enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to a personnel matter, because discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town. Do I have a motion? Second.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call vote, the board will not resume open session this evening.
Aye.
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 Good night, everyone.
Good night.